than all heights and lower than all depths. Bring together in yourself all opposites with that greatness which is beyond all measure. If then you do not make yourself equal to God, is astonishing. It's also Dame Frances Yates' book, Giordano Bruno and the Hermetic Tradition. Well, I want to read you some of this stuff because it's very interesting, and it has a modernity that is astonishing. It's also very psychedelic. Here's a little passage on the imagination. I'm reading from Book 9 of the Corpus Hermeticum in the Scott translation. This is a 4-volume set. I only brought the text and translation volume, but if you read Greek, it's all here. If you don't, it's all here in English. But this will just give you a feeling for the approach. If then you do not make yourself equal to God, you cannot apprehend God, for like is known by like. Leap clear of all that is corporeal, and make yourself to a like expanse with that greatness which is beyond all measure. Rise above all time, and become eternal. Then you will apprehend God. Think
Hello,
that
Jeff.
for you too, nothing is impossible.
How are you, sir?
That you too are immortal, and that you are able to grasp all things in your thought, to know every craft and every science. Find your home in the haunts of every living creature. Make yourself higher than all heights and lower than all depths. Bring together in yourself all opposites of quality, heat and cold, dryness and fluidity. Think that you are everywhere at once, on land, at sea, in heaven. Think that you are not yet begotten, that you are in the womb, that you are young, that you are old, that you have died, that you are in the world beyond the grave. Grasp in your thought all this at once, all times and places, all substances and qualities and magnitudes together. Then you can apprehend God. But if you shut up your soul in your body and abase yourself and say, I know nothing, I can do nothing, I am afraid of earth and sea, I cannot mount to heaven, I know not what I was, nor what I shall be, then what have you to do with God? Your thought can grasp in good if you cleave to the body and are evil. Interesting, very different from the humble yourself, hard labor, spun wool, and watery beer approach of medieval Christianity. Here's an amazing passage. People like to think people thought the world was flat until the Renaissance. This is an incredible psychedelic image of outer space that is 2nd century AD. Would that it were possible for you to grow wings and soar into the air. Poised between earth and heaven, you might see the solid earth, the fluid sea and the streaming rivers, the wandering air, the penetrating fire, the courses of the stars, and the swiftness of the movement with which heaven encompasses all. What happiness were that, my son, to see all these borne along with one impulse, and to behold him who is unmoved, moving in all that moves, and him who is hidden, made manifest through his works. And it goes on and on. It's very readable. It's very literary. It's highly poetic. It's a celebration of nature. The notion of sin is completely absent, and it rings with a kind of confidence, a kind of joy that was completely running counter to the brimstone and damnation point of view of Christianity. Here's to me, a psychedelic passage. But he who presents all things to us through our senses and thereby manifest himself through all things and in all things, and especially
seems to have stopped. And connection is unstable. If you're on Wi-Fi, try plugging in. how can he, being in himself, be manifest to you through your bodily eyes? But if you have power to see with the eyes of the mind, then, my son, he will manifest himself to you. For the Lord manifests himself ungrudgingly through all the universe, and you can behold God's image with your eyes and lay hold on it with your hands. If you wish to see him, think on the sun, think on the course of the moon, think on the order of the stars. Who is it that maintains that order? The sun is the greatest of the gods in heaven. To him as to their king and overlord, and all the kings of heaven yield place. And yet this mighty God, greater than earth and sea, submits to having smaller stars circling above him. Who is it then, my son, that he always obeys with reverence and awe? Each of these stars, too, is confined by measured limits and has an appointed space to range in. Why do not all the stars in heaven run like and equal courses? Who is it that is assigned to each its place and marked out for each the extent of its course? And so forth. So it's a nature-oriented, celebratory. It glories in the exercise of the mind. It is not doctrinal. It is not pietistic. It is magical, psychedelic, expansive. And I'm not implying that they used psychedelic substances. The evidence for that is incredibly murky and hard to get at. And probably they didn't. I mean, one of the real tragedies of Western history is that Western Europe is so poor in psychoactive plants. I mean, had Western Europe stayed in touch with the mystery religions of ancient Greece, Christianity would never have been able to force its agenda
to the degree that it did. I think you can make an argument that there were psychedelic mysteries in Europe, probably up until the time of the fall of Eleusis. Hermeticism is only one heterodox strain among many that were in existence in Europe in the late Roman period, and that then partially survived into the Dark Ages. I mean, you have Neoplatonism, which is a group of philosophers in the 3rd and 4th century, who Plotinus, Porphyry, Proclus, and that crowd, and they took Plato, the late Plato, and contorted that into a mystical doctrine of emanation. They were what are called emanationists. What this means is you start with, it's either called the one, or the unnameable, or Brahman, or something like that, and then you have a series of declensions into more and more material and more multiplistic expressions of being. These Neoplatonists were emanationists, and their theories about how the universe is constructed have become sort of the unconscious basis of all later magical speculation. If they are the people who brought the...
No, I was looking for that, Jeff. Yesterday and the day before, I was looking for... I couldn't figure out which show you were talking about, man. I'm not going to lie. I'm very anxious about the state of the world, Frank. Alex Jones is saying... Fuck. Everyone is saying he's got vaccinated, will all be dead within 3 years. Wow, that's interesting. I don't think I can actually say that here on the channel, so I won't. But that's a listener's opinion there, guys. They have announced that they will now be policing all comments, especially super chats. So I don't have super chats anyway. I'm not eligible to monetize my channel because you need 1,000 subs, and they're never going to let that happen. You guys see how hard it is for me to even get up to 300 subs on the other channel, let alone trying to get any subs on this channel. This channel is at what now? How many subs are we on here? And I know most people think that sub count doesn't really matter. We're at 15 subs. That's not bad, man. That's pretty good for a month of effort. But yeah, I'm not going to worry about it, Jeff. But I can't talk about it. So tell me which one should I watch? Because I've been looking. I've been trying to keep an eye out for it. So let me know which episode it is. Well, I hear that it's causing problems. I have heard that. I don't know all of the details because I'm personally not. I haven't juiced up, and I'm trying to avoid it. They're trying to integrate our apps so that our get out of jail free card, like the ability to go outside, they're trying to cut that off unless you participate. But it's different here in China too. Like they actually use a different juice. We'll say like states, they got orange juice. Over here they have lemonade. So I don't know if there's any difference. Yeah, I've heard about that. No, I have. I've already looked it up. I'm familiar with that idea, Jeff. Again, I can't really say verbally anything that you're saying, but I can stay on the same page as you. Yeah, so we're listening to Terrence McKenna, and honestly, I'm not really that familiar with him. I think I've read a couple of his books. Seems like he's passed away already. He was an American ethnobotanist and mystic who advocated the responsible use of naturally occurring psychedelic plants. He wrote some 35 books or something. I think I met this guy. I think he lived in San Diego. No, he was up in Berkeley, but I definitely met him at like a Dead show or something, and I knew people that knew him. He passed away in 2000. Yeah, so he was born in 1946, an American mystic, an advocate, interested in shamanism. Yeah, he was a friend of my uncle's. My uncle was anthropology at UCLA, and this was a friend of his. I met him one time at a party. He didn't live to be very old, man. 4 and 50, 54 years old. He did better than me so far. We got some of his notable works. Let's see, what did I read of his? Probably The Mushroom Grower's Guide. He's got kind of a whiny voice. He grew up in Colorado originally with Irish ancestry. There's another Irishman that didn't live very long. Yeah, I read his Mushroom Grower's book. He wrote another book that I read too. He had a farm in Hawaii. Yeah, he was one of the guys that retired to Hawaii. He was a longtime sufferer of migraines and began to have, another brain tumor, brain seizure, brain cancer. Sad. Wow, and then all of his 3,000 rare books were suddenly burned. That's no coincidence, huh? Yeah, these guys who are hardcore psychonauts, they didn't live long. I think Robert Anton Wilson was one of the more long-lived of the psychonauts. Who's Dennis? Lots of okay, I can't read this, Jeff, but I can post it. So you can see your comment on the screen right now. So I can neither confirm nor deny those claims. But I can certainly entertain them. I guess I can. I don't know if I can even entertain them. Yeah, so the Department of a Harmonious Society has announced that they will be policing comments very strictly. Let me check. I'll put him back on. He's got kind of a whiny voice, though. He doesn't speak in a major key, so it's a little bit annoying. But that's okay. You know, what are you going to do? He's got kind of an effeminate voice.
Angels into the picture so intensely because they were trying to create a descending hierarchy of being.
I did his heroic dose shroom challenge back in the 80s. Tell me about that. What's that, about 500 grams of psilocybin?
It became a real problem for Christianity because they are not very easy to distinguish from the old stellar demons of the...
I'm checking out yours here. Are psychedelics responsible for premature death? I don't think so. I just think that people who are not necessarily in tip-top shape and are born into kind of a situation of hardship and suffer a lot of trauma. Robert Anton Wilson, I think he lived a little longer than most of them. And my personal guru, the top of the Wizard's Tower right now, who I have thrown my hat in with, is Carol Poke Runyon, and he's still alive. Yeah, Robert Anton Wilson was one of the longest-lived psychonauts. No, I think that the people who are naturally tend towards shamanism, it's because they have some disharmonious arrangement in their internal organs, or they were born into a situation that caused a lot of childhood trauma, and so they awaken to the Christ consciousness, and then they do those things to power up, and they know they're headed out early anyway, and so they just embrace the Tao, so to speak, and just enjoy their time here and do some of the greatest amount of work, like real work. They get down to business and they write a lot of books, and they touch a lot of people's lives, and they wake a lot of people up to spirit. So that's good. So Dennis McKenna is Terrence's brother. Okay, Dennis does live events and has been on the goofball show. Yeah, I don't trust this this glowy. I'm suspicious that this fella here is shilled out for, because I don't think it's necessary for the general public. Like, I wouldn't recommend this for ordinary individuals. It's the path of the shaman and the mystic. And why would you want like the entire society engaging in shamanistic practices? I personally disagree with it, especially young people. Like, one of the biggest problems I've had with a lot of these counterculture movements and the psychedelic movement of the 60s, 70s, 80s is that they brought children in on these things, and they're giving little kids, 10, 11, 12-year-old kids high dosages of LSD and mushrooms and cannabis and all of that. And I think that's child abuse, man. Yeah, I don't trust him. I think he's a liar. That's just my opinion. The basic equation is that like power corrupts and ultimate power corrupts ultimately. So the more power an individual gets, it follows suit that they become corrupt. None can be exempt from the law. And so what I'm saying here, Jeff, is that power needs to be distributed. And even guys like, the guy you, obviously it seems that you like him, but even he is not exempt from the law. And so the more powerful an individual becomes, like this guy, with millions and millions of viewers and hundreds of millions of dollars, it's a kind of treachery against the Commonwealth. No, it's just natural law. With great power comes great corruption, and the two cannot be avoided. That's why power is supposed to be distributed. And in a naturally organized society, very few people in any given aeon would be able to achieve a very high level of power and influence. And in today's modern society, it becomes increasingly more available to a lot of different diverse personality cults. And when it comes right down to it, if you're engaged one-to-one, then you'll see the truth. Being at a distance, you can't really see the truth so clearly. None can be exempt from the law, though. I mean, that's just it's time tested and proven true since time immemorial. His situation is one such that he has the hundreds of millions of dollars, number one, right? Which is more than any given individual would ever achieve in a single lifetime, without like just unbelievable amounts of effort and good fortune and bestowed upon you by heaven. Hundreds of millions of dollars and millions of followers, and a kind of elite manipulation of the narrative without the ability to point directly at truth. I've never seen Joe point at truth. I've listened to him for hours and hours and hours. He's fun. He's entertaining to listen to, but I've never really seen him point at truth. He promotes hardcore, high-level psychedelics as a way to enlightenment. But from what I understand, that's not a form of enlightenment. It's a form of self-deception and just increasing your level of delusionment. But that's just my opinion. Feel free to Yeah, that's the story, huh? That's always the story. I started IBM in a garage, right? Microsoft, right? It was me and another guy hanging out in our garage. That's how it all got started. Um, when it's got glowy money behind it, that's always the story, right? That I'm sure it's pretty easy to track this right here. I'm sure it would probably not be hard at all to track his involvement with these guys because otherwise you're not allowed to grow. Unless you're toeing the line and at least directing yourself in the direction they want you to go, then you would not get the platform. Doesn't matter how popular you are.
Of paganism. Paganism was largely the belief that the power of the stars.
Maybe you might be right.
Down
I'm fallible.
Through a series, through sympathetic magic, really.
Before I go make my coffee, I gotta work on that. It'll take me a couple of minutes. There's one thing that holds true. Maybe he was a good guy when he started out, right? And maybe he's not the worst of them, but there's one thing true. None can be exempt from the law, and power corrupts. And the more power you have, and obviously he's got quite a bit of power. He's got quite a bit of financial power, quite a bit of social influence. And so it just can't be avoided, man. That's why power is supposed to be distributed. That's why the original forefathers, they didn't allow anyone to become emperor, and they didn't really make the office of president that important. In fact, they thought that the office of president was one of the worst offices in the whole system, and so they limited the power of the executive branch and tried to balance it with judiciary and legislative. But we see how that's going now with old Potato Head. No, I agree with you. But not everyone is. But everyone with great reach is influenced. That's a fact. There are certain verboten topics that nobody can talk about, no matter how pure-hearted they are. That's just the way it is. And so they'll be channeled into towing the line no matter what, because then there won't be anything else to talk about. And they'll be allowed to talk about only those things which are deemed within the realm of the party line, the MSM, the mainstream narrative.
By setting up
Give me a couple minutes, man.
resonances in a ritual situation, you could draw the power of the stars down into your projects and your intentions. And the late Middle Ages was a period of intensely working out all the associations between minerals, colors, perfumes, plants, musical notes, and styles, so that you could then bring together all these things for purposes of magical evocation. And if any of you are interested in this, the book to read, which will point you toward many other interesting books, is a wonderful book called Spiritual and Demonic Magic from Ficino to Campanella. Some of you may remember Campanella, hell of a fighter. Anyway, hello? And in the Renaissance, over a period of about 3 generations, this became a real problem, because what starts out as angel magic ends up as out-and-out demonic conjuration. Something which I've noticed my 14-year-old son has an incredibly unhealthy interest in.
All right, I'm back. Let me check the chat. Yeah, Jeff, the natural law cannot be usurped. And so power corrupts, and unlimited power or even great amounts of power corrupts more and more. So the higher up the hierarchy you go, you just by default become more corrupt. There's no way to avoid it, no matter how hard you try. And that's why if you want to Hawaii.edu power kills, these are absolute truths that cannot be avoided. Freedom, democracy are the answer. Power tends to corrupt, and absolute power corrupts absolutely. Power kills, and absolute power kills absolutely. It is true that democratic freedom is an engine of national and individual wealth and prosperity. Hardly known, however, is that freedom also saves millions of lives from famine, disease, war, collective violence, and democide. Democide is defined as genocide and mass murder by corrupt systems. Freedom is a basic human right recognized internationally as the heart of social justice. Freedom is an engine of economic and human development. Freedom ameliorates the problem of mass poverty. Free people do not suffer and have not had famines, and by theory should not. Freedom, therefore, is the solution to hunger and famine. Freedom is the answer. So these truths cannot be overturned, and that's why they're called truths, because the wisdom, what does the wisdom of the ancients mean? It means that it was accurate. Yeah, I wish I had some Irish cream. I would like to start off the day with a Irish coffee, and I think my wife actually has a bottle of Bailey's in there, but I will not do it because I have classes today, and the only reason I wanted to tune in real quick was I have a break until 11, so 9:30 to 11. I'm supposed to be doing lesson prep. No, you're wrong, Jeff. There always is a clandestine operation going on. The DHS, the Department of a Harmonious Society, and the Cocaine Importation Agency, they're always working 24/7, right? You see how they've bolstered their Heilmat. So the Heilmat is it's a 24/7 operation, and it includes everyone. The net is cast wide, and everyone in media is included, even myself somehow. So I'll tell you how I am shilled out, because they shut me down every time I try to speak a truth. So anytime that I hit at the truth or try to talk about the ultimate reality and complete clarity, I get a smack in the mouth by the platform monitors, right? The Karens over at the boob tube, they shut me down. And little by little, they entrain me to keep my mind within an isolated box of ideas that can be expressed freely and openly, because the human spirit craves freedom above all else, right? And so if you're just limited within this little box where you can express your freedom, then you're going in the direction they want you to go in, no matter what you do. So there's no way to avoid it, Jeff. You can argue it day and night, but the clandestine operation is ongoing, and everyone is participating in it. Because if you're not participating in it, you'll be kicked off the systems immediately. Like even Jones. Jones was trying to buck the system. Look what happened to him. They shut him down. The only platform he's able to interact on now are the platforms that he created himself. And so what did he do when that happened to him? It stifles the spirit, and he spiraled down into decadence, right? And why is he building an empire anyway? Is it for the mass good of humanity? Right? You have to question these things, and you have to realize that those timeless truths, that's what they are, man. You can argue against them all you like and say, well, this guy, he's different. He'll overcome, he won't be swayed to the dark side of the force. But history has proven that that's not correct. That
which I did as well at his age. I hope it's not the family curse coming back. Yeah, so I mentioned the dating error. It was Lactantius, who was one of the fathers of the early church, one of the patristic writers. That's that generation of theologians that followed Christ, who canonized the Christian religion. And he placed Hermes Trismegistus as older than Moses, older than Pythagoras, older than Plato. And then it wasn't until Marie Casaubon corrected that problem. See, we forget how the really transformative breakthrough that was represented for Western Europe by the recovery of all of this ancient literature. It had been completely lost. And also a misimpression that probably needs correcting is I think most people who are not schooled in Western history think that the further back in time, the more quote-unquote superstitious people were. This isn't actually the case. It isn't a case of the further back in time you go, the more belief in demons, magical conjuration, and stuff like that you get. The 10th, 11th, and 12th centuries in Europe were periods of remarkable piety and intellectual cohesion. Of course, it was also some kind of a fascist nightmare. That's how they achieved it. They had stamped out paganism. They had pushed heresy and heterodox thinking to the very distant frontiers of the empire, of the Holy Roman Empire. And people were not superstitious, and people were not obsessed with horoscopes and conjuration and this sort of thing. Where that all began was, where it reached its culmination is in the 16th century. The 16th century, the 1500s, it was the most magical, obsessed century in the last 10. And alchemy and conjuration.
Yeah, that's a good question, Jeff. I'm not here. When I mention law, I'm not talking about human constructs. I'm talking about principles that have been realized by the ancients and promoted through the mystery tradition as wisdom. I'll give you an example of one. I spent 2 years on what's that called? Silence. I forget how you could word it correctly, but anyway, from like 19 to 21, ages 19 to 21, I went on like a silence fast, and my motto was 少说话多做事 in Chinese, and I would write it like a dozen times a day at least. One day I remember sitting down and writing it like over like 200 times or something. I think 100, 150 or close to 200 times I wrote those words in Chinese over and over and over again all day long. 少说话多做事 is speak less and do more. And so I went on a silence fast, and I tried to swallow every word and idea that wanted to come out of me. And it wasn't that I was stifling my creativity. It's that I was putting my creativity into action. I was jumping up before dawn every day, doing my meditation, doing my kung fu, working 2, sometimes 3 jobs as I was putting myself through college, right? And I achieved the level of, I was manager in a restaurant, and I had a couple of other jobs. Like anytime I had free time, I was working and generating money. But even in dealing with the public, I tried 90% of the time to use the Jedi mind trick in getting everything done without speaking. Like if I had to speak, right? If I had to engage in conversation, I made it as concise and efficient as possible. And so in the Tao Te Ching, Lao Tzu writes that those who speak about things do not know, and those who know do not speak. And I really embodied that principle as a young man. Now, I'm a big fan of martial arts too, and I love individual unarmed combat arts like kung fu and that type of thing. And I know that Joe Rogan's a big MMA guy, right? And he did announcing, and I guess he fought a little bit. But now here's the failing in that, and I'll tell you how it's deceitful. Give me a second, though.
And talismanic magic and sympathetic magic, all of these things flourished really not as a throwback, but as a kind of prelude to modern science. Modern science is an incredibly demonic enterprise. And we will see, as we discuss this stuff, that in a curious and little rarely discussed way, the program, the agenda of magical dissidents in Europe have been entirely achieved by the forces of what we call modernity.
I'll tell you how Joe in particular is a fraud. It's not that he's not a fraud in that he didn't achieve some level of athletic performance in MMA, but the whole idea of MMA and combat sports to be promoted publicly is a form of Satyrian decadence, and it's a kind of devil worship, right? It's idolatry in that you're idolizing individuals in their combat skill, and it's not a genuine martial art, and you're not building a militia, and you're not training young men or giving them the opportunity to train collectively, like in Roman fighting tactics or small fire team tactics, right? If you're to do that, then the US government will probably oppose you and try to cause some trouble for you, right? Because that's a genuine path. Imagine setting up, buy yourself 100 acres in the countryside, right? And set up a bunch of Mongolian huts, and then organize training campaigns for young men to come out there and spend their time for like 2 to 4 years, something like that, doing 1776 style militia regulated training with firearms and individual combat arts and stuff like that, then that would be a genuine path. And what would happen, right? You wouldn't be allowed to do it because that's genuine. It follows truth-based centered awareness. Another aspect of that, hold on.
That it has been done in an entirely secular metaphor. I mean, if you take even the trivial belief about alchemists, that they were concerned with changing lead into gold. Of course, that isn't what it was about, but there were plenty of con artists running around on the periphery of these deeper scenes who were claiming they could change lead into gold. Well, in the 20th century, we routinely change lead to gold. You do it with neutron bombardment in particle accelerators. And of course, it costs far more to do it.
Yeah, it costs too much money to do it. And it's just like that type of thinking, like what he just said right there, Terrence McKenna, just useless. It doesn't service, it doesn't serve the Commonwealth in any way. So motivating young men to get up and join to push towards a homesteading act and to teach young men the spiritual alchemy of sexual alchemy and to work hard to protect the divine feminine and to eradicate out of our culture a worship of inappropriate sexuality, and to work towards all of those things which stabilize the health and well-being of humanity. Those things are universal truths and could help the nation, right? The Boy Scouts, when was the last time you saw a mass promotion of the idealism of patriotism, nationalism, defense of the border? Does he speak on any of those topics? Does he speak on the huge homeless crisis, and not only the problem itself, but a way to solve the problem, because there are ways. There aren't any homeless in this country. I'm not saying that tyranny is the answer, definitely not for the Americans, but like imagine young boys having the opportunity to go off to a camp where they build a little Mongolian hut, learn to use a rifle, and learn group combat tactics. You know, better to have the soldier doing the farming than the farmer to be on the battlefield. So you would train, and not even elite, it would just be the order of the day. All kids during the summertime would have these established spiritual camps to go to where they could do trail running and group tactics and learn about farming and horticulture and stuff. Joe Rogan is no Rudolph Steiner, right? And you don't have to have an overriding paradigm that's oppressive and moralized at people. That's not what I'm suggesting at all. You can see that I have all of my own vices and so on and so forth. But unless you're really spearheading the freedom movement and making America first, right? And openly speaking out against things like the replacement movement and strengthening the border and holding Mexico accountable and dismantling the police departments that are engaged in the distribution of fentanyl, overthrowing the U.S. customs that's openly allowing fentanyl to come in. Did you know that the Border Patrol agents, the guys in control of that, their hands are tied. They're not even allowed to arrest illegals sneaking across the border with backpacks full of fentanyl anymore. And when this whole thing launched off, I talked to an intel agent here at the U.S. Embassy. He was in the Boy Scouts. I was a Boy Scout leader. And he told me that the U.S. Customs aren't even allowed to look at the cargo ships coming out of Shanghai and stuff like that. They're not even allowed to check them. They don't have the authority to even check them. And they wouldn't have the time or energy to do it anyway. So if that's a fact, and it is a fact, and these things are being done by design, then if you openly speak out against them like I do, then you're not allowed to grow. You're not allowed to get a base of followers. You're not allowed to even keep your channel open very long without getting smacked down for totally innocuous comments. But if you're a guy like Joe Rogan and you promote this culture of self-aggrandizement and swelling the ego, and look at how I can intellectually talk about this and dichotomize this, that, and the other thing, then yeah, you can grow as big as you want because you got nothing to say. And you're essentially not benefiting the culture in any tangible way. And yeah, so absolutely, they'll be promoted. So yeah, I think that he's a useless boob for the most part. And he's clever at running his mouth. He's entertaining. He promotes the use of hardcore psychedelics. He engages in sensationalism. And ultimately, his athletic achievement as an individual does not benefit anyone. It doesn't even benefit himself, right? In the long run, it's just going to make his body break down faster, and he's going to suffer from, it won't grant him longevity. It never does. I honestly, Jeff, I don't know much about him. I'm just addressing that one comment that you make, that you think he is immune to the corrupting power, to the corrupting force of power. And as far as I know, that cannot be done. Very few individuals could achieve that throughout time. But maybe he's godlike, philosopher king. Don't have the time, Jeff. I've got to study enough and do lesson prep so that I can feed my family. I don't have time to hang out and watch Alex Jones and Joe Rogan when I listened to him for 2 decades, man, off and on. And they never once addressed the truth, and they never once gave me anything. They never once in any way tangibly benefited my life. So, I mean, maybe engaging in the topic of the day and the sensationalism of it and thinking, oh, that was cool, that was funny, right? But how's that ever going to benefit anyone? How can it have any long-lasting effect on society? I don't doubt it. I don't doubt it at all. I mean, I hope so. I hope so. I hope your faith isn't misplaced. Good for you, sir.
And the worth of the gold that
I
you
missed
get
a couple
out,
of your questions.
but that really wasn't the point, was it? It was to prove that it could be done. The dreams of creating the humble.
Of course, Jeff, I'm a human being. Anything we can conceive of in the human realm is limited by the cognitive capacity of the human mind. And even when we reach beyond that, then it cannot be spoken into words. But the law is the law. I mean, it's written, and the Emerald Tablets is a part of the understanding of the law. What Terrence McKenna is talking about here, the Corpus Hermeticum, the Arcanum, and so on and so forth. Those are all a part of the law, and it's been established and well documented over thousands of years, and it just cannot be avoided. So yes, I have read and studied. Not only have I read, I've studied ad nauseum, and how they are applicable in the world, like how to use them. So that takes time. You can't know something by reading a book about it. You have to have experimental methods by which to apply them. Okay, I believe you. I'm not arguing with you, Jeff. That's fine. I hope I didn't offend you with your homeboy, your bromance. I'll try to look at a couple more.
Kill us.
And then I got to roll, man.
Are dreams that dovetail directly into the aspirations of modern biology, genetics.
I'm not saying that they don't tell the truth on certain transient individual phenomena occurring in the world today. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm saying that what he promotes, I've listened to him a lot, and what he promotes and what he focuses on does not have any reference to truth, and it does not illuminate truth, and it does not bring anyone closer to the truth. It's just window dressing. It's polishing the leaves of the life tree. It's not servicing the root of humanity, which cannot be done on a mass scale. It has to be done at an individual level in small groups, small mastermind groups. And that's just a fact of reality. I mean, it cannot be, you can't usurp the reality, man.
Forth and so on. The great chain of being of Aristotle.
Okay, I got another question here from Jeff. He says, what are you making assumptions based on? I'm not assuming anything, man. I'm just pointing out the direct reality that the entire operation that he promotes and everything that he's gone through as far as his representation within the world was erroneous in that it does not address the main issues of human life. Jordan Peterson, same thing. Jordan Peterson spins a wily game, right? It's a pleasure to listen to him. At the end of the day, how have you benefited from it, right? How many young men's lives were really turned around by Peterson? I think Peterson had a greater effect on necessarily directing people towards actualizable truths than anyone else in our modern landscape. But look at him as an individual. Is he really embodying that truth? And the answer is no. He's just a clever charlatan.
Is animated, given a dimension of motion, and lo and behold, it becomes the Darwin-Wallace theory of evolution. Mercilliard talks about this, about how all the alchemical dreams of the 15th and 16th century have been brought to fruition in the 20th century. But again, in the absence of magical rhetoric, but certainly in a spirit of magical and Faustian recklessness, for sure. I mean, this is scientists, they claim such a devotion to truth that decency must never stand in the way, because they serve a higher God than human values. They serve the golem of the truth in some weird way that makes the truth okay, even if it kills you. I study philosophy from Paul Feyerabend, and he used to say at the
And I hope you don't misconstrue what I'm saying, Jeff. I'm not saying that he's not an interesting and intelligent fellow and is having a good time on his podcast. What I am saying is that, even you tuning in for me today, you have a limited amount of attention that you can give to each individual task throughout your day, right? And so you're taking time away from your own cultivation in order to fellowship with me, and I thank you for that. But I'm saying that in the long run, you have to decide who and what you can absorb each day as far as fellowship goes. And like I told you a little while ago, I've got like 25 hours of online teaching each week, and I have to do lesson prep for those classes, which I got one coming up here in a moment. I have to end this transmission. But I've listened to some Joe Rogan. I've listened to some Jordan Peterson. I've listened to some of these other big shining stars on the platforms these days. I've listened to my fair share of Jones, right? And in the end, how much benefit did anything come from any of that? Very little, very little. Now, when I study the Corpus Hermeticum, when I study the Taoist texts, the Tao Te Ching, Zhuangzi, those things have tangible, real world acceleration of enlightenment. They benefit an individual, right? They give you the fortitude to make your way through the maze of tyranny that surrounds us now. And I know that Rogan, he does his thing, and I know that he's a halfway decent guy. But I'm just saying, in the end, the power will corrupt him if it hasn't already, and that he will be channeled by the bad guys to promote the general message of dissolution and so on and so forth. Man, we have run out of time, Jeff. I hope I didn't piss you off too much by not loving Rogan with you. He's who is that other guy, that shock jock guy that recently really let the power corrupt him, and everybody loved him in the beginning because he was so sensational. Howard Stern's a perfect example of where that path leads. And so that's all I've got to say on it. What was the point of today's transmission? Oh, just to tune in and say hello. I hope you all good looking sexy people are doing well out in Happy Land. I will see you in the abodes of the future. Yeah, sounds like you do. You spent quite a bit of time defending him and pleading his case. You obviously, you like him a little bit. There's nothing wrong with that either. There's no reason why there shouldn't be individuals that you really like and promote within the what is that called? The Tinseltown sphere of entertainment. And I'm not trying to, you see, there's where you got me wrong. I'm just telling the truth, Monsieur Tiedrich. It's not about my portrayal. It's about the reality of the law. And so you're trying to say that he's an individual like Alexander the Great, or let's see, who else could we compare him to? Marcus Aurelius, right? You're saying that he's on the level of Marcus Aurelius. And I'm saying, hardly. That's all I'm saying. And thank you for that, Monsieur Tiedrich. I certainly appreciate that. He's no Marcus Aurelius, Monsieur Tiedrich. He's no Lao Tzu. He's no Jordan Peterson. And Peterson doesn't even, as much as I love Peterson, I still think he's a shill too, because you can't help but be a shill for the system. Even me right now here, I have to shill out to a certain extent because I have to watch my mouth. and I can't speak the truth directly. And I can't engage in the productivity that brings about change in society, because it's not allowed unless you're allowing for that change to be the leftist progressivism message of dissolution and destruction of Western civilization. Okay. Good man. Thank you. And much love to you as well. As we wander into the abodes of the future, as above, so below. Jeff, do good magic. And I'll see you next time, guys. Have a great day. Bye for now.